There are moments in life when we silently ask ourselves, to what extent do the people around me actually contribute to my well-being? Is it possible that, without even realizing it, even those who share our blood are draining our energy, diminishing our worth as we age, and trapping us in dynamics that prevent us from living this stage of life with dignity? This question, one that many would rather avoid, is far more common than we think, especially in old age, when the way others see us can become an invisible cage. There's a silent force quietly chipping away at the emotional vitality of many older adults. It's not an illness, it's not aging itself, and it's not even loneliness. It's something more subtle, more painful, and often shamefully ignored. The habit of surrounding ourselves with people who don't let us be, who infantilize our choices, who constantly remind us of what we can no longer do instead of honoring what we are still capable of feeling, thinking, and choosing. I've walked alongside many men and women carrying this invisible weight. I've listened to their stories, whispered through held-back tears or hidden behind nervous laughter, trying to mask the pain. After years of observing, asking, simply being there, I've arrived at a truth I want to share with you today. The quality of your later years depends less on the passage of time and more on who you choose to spend them with. This video isn't about cutting ties or withdrawing into yourself. On the contrary, we're going to talk about a deep, loving decision, protecting your personal space with the same care you would give a blooming garden. And you don't need grand gestures or expensive therapy to do it. All it takes is a new way of seeing, wiser, calmer, freer. Let's begin. And that truth begins with a wound that few dare to name, the pain of sharing your later years with people who don't really see you, not with enemies, not with strangers, but with those who are supposed to be your safe haven. Children who make decisions about your life as if you've lost the right to choose. Siblings who criticize your slowness but forget everything you once did for them. Grandchildren who love you, yes, but no longer ask how you're doing, only what you can give them. This is the wound we need to face today. The problem runs deep, and it won't be solved with comforting words. It has cultural, familial, and emotional roots. Many older adults were taught to endure, to adapt, to stay close to family no matter how emotionally mistreated they feel. And so, day after day, they begin to fade, believing it's simply the cost of not being alone. But the truth is something else entirely. Companionship should not hurt. The presence of others should not make us feel small. Growing old with those who don't value it is a slow, quiet way of losing it. This is not a personal failure. It's not that you're weak or lacking in character. It's that we've normalized family dynamics where the elderly are treated like antique furniture, cherished, yet in the way. You're expected to be there, but not to speak, to care, but not to have an opinion, to comply, but not to question. And in that contradiction, your presence, your joy, your purpose begin to fade. The consequences are clear, even if few notice them. Emotional exhaustion, anxiety, the feeling of not belonging, of not being heard, of not being able to breathe freely in your own home. Many women, in particular, carry the weight of years or decades of having lived for everyone but themselves. And now that they could finally rest, they feel as if even that right doesn't belong to them. Who taught them that self-care was selfish? Who convinced us that true love means giving up who we are? No, you're not overreacting. You're not the only one, and you are most certainly not alone. What comes next is an act of courage, discovering that there is another way to live this chapter, a way that is freer, more dignified, more yours. Keep listening, because the next truth might just give you back the strength you thought you'd lost. The second point I want to share with you is this: not all family ties are worth holding on to. That sentence might sound harsh, but within it lies a kind of freedom that many people spend their whole lives trying to find. There's a forgotten practice, essential to emotional well-being in old age, and that is the ability to set boundaries, not as a rebellious act, but as a profound gesture of self-respect. Learning to say no, even to those we love, can be the start of a more authentic life. For years, this act was mistaken for ingratitude. After everything we've done for you, how can you say that? You have to put up with it. They're your family. It's your duty, your responsibility. Words spoken with sweetness or with reproach, but with the same effect, they silence us. But both science and life experience are starting to tell a different story. Recent studies in emotional gerontology have shown that relational stress in old age can be more harmful than many physical illnesses. The pressure to maintain toxic relationships, the constant tension of pleasing or staying quiet, directly affects blood pressure, sleep, digestion, even cognitive function. The body knows. It feels it. A 76-year-old woman told me recently, "Since I stopped answering my sister's daily calls, I sleep better. I feel like a weight's been lifted from my soul." It's not about hatred or conflict. It's about protecting what you still have, and what you still have is your peace. Society has imposed the idea that older adults must remain available, that they must accept whatever comes their way with a smile, without complaint, without judgment, without retreat. But true Stoicism isn't about enduring without feeling. It's about choosing where to invest your energy, wisely. It's about knowing there are battles you no longer need to fight, visits you no longer need to receive, words you no longer need to swallow. Because every time you force yourself to endure, you take space away from your own well-being. Yes, setting boundaries can cause discomfort. It can bring complaints, misunderstandings, even silence. But it also opens a door, the door to your emotional sanctuary, that place where you can be with yourself without fear, without guilt, without the need to explain. And from there, from that private space, a new way of living old age begins, with less noise, with more truth. Now you might feel that it's not so simple, that there are fears, loyalties, real bonds of love that make it hard to pull away. Don't worry. What comes next isn't a demand, it's a guide. We're going to talk about how to recognize the internal signs that tell you when a relationship is no longer healthy, and how to start listening to them without guilt, without rushing, but with resolve. Because you deserve to live this chapter in peace. And peace sometimes begins with a word we were never taught to say: enough. Third point, and perhaps one of the hardest to accept. Many older adults continue sharing their lives with people who make them feel small, because they've believed for decades that they don't deserve anything different. This belief, quietly yet persistently ingrained, has shaped decisions, silences, and resignations that now weigh heavier than any physical pain. But the time has come to examine these ideas, not to judge them, but to release them. The first belief I want to dismantle is this: they're my family, so I have to put up with it. This phrase is repeated like a commandment, but at its core, it's a chain. Of course, family matters. Of course, the love is real. But love, when it hurts, needs to be re-evaluated. What many people call putting up with it is actually tolerating an unequal dynamic. It means allowing respect to fade. And respect, in old age, is not a luxury, it's nourishment. No one, not even a child, a sibling, or a partner, has the right to treat you with contempt, to invalidate your choices, to silence your voice. True care shows up in listening, not in control. The second belief runs even deeper. If I distance myself, I'll be alone. That fear is valid. No one wants to grow old in isolation. But here's a truth that can change how you see things. Physical solitude is far less destructive than emotional loneliness experienced in the company of others. Some people are constantly surrounded, yet feel invisible. Some are always available, yet no one reaches out to them with genuine love. Sometimes, stepping away from those who don't care for you makes room for those who can accompany you with respect. Healthy solitude is a place of healing. Harmful company, on the other hand, drains you from within. And a third belief I often hear: at my age, there's no point in changing. This idea has trapped thousands of people in lives that no longer belong to them. But let me tell you something, your age is not a prison. It's a privilege. You've lived, you've seen, you've loved, you've cried, and all of that gives you a right that's rarely named. The right to change your mind, to choose differently, to reclaim your place, not with shouting, but with presence. Changing at 70, 80, even 90 is not madness. It's a way of honoring your story. All these beliefs were planted with good intentions. No one invented them to cause harm, but they've caused pain. They've limited lives. They've silenced voices. And today, you have the power to start freeing yourself from them. Because what comes next is not about rejecting others. It's about affirming yourself. We're going to explore a practical, simple, and real way to start caring for your relationships from a wiser place. It's not about cutting everyone off. It's about choosing better, and that choice can begin today. And now, after letting go of some old beliefs, after bravely examining the relationships that may no longer support your well-being, it's time to ask yourself, how do I begin to live this stage of life with the kind of company that truly nourishes, honors, and embraces me? There's no need to move, argue, or explain. The transformation begins within, as a quiet, steady decision, choosing who you share your time, your energy, your tenderness with. And that choice can be made in peace. Picture this. On an ordinary morning, you pour yourself a coffee or a tea and you sit down calmly. You take a few minutes to reflect on who you're going to allow into your emotional space today. It doesn't matter if they're family, neighbors, people you live with, or those who call only once in a while. What matters is asking yourself, do they make me feel good? Do they truly listen to me? Do they respect my pace, my decisions, my way of being in the world? This small ritual can become a daily anchor. You don't need to do anything dramatic or visible. Just give yourself permission to choose from a place of calm. Some days, you may say yes, others, no. And both are acts of self-love. Then, you can begin practicing a phrase that becomes your ally. A phrase that sets a boundary without aggression, that protects without isolating. Something like, today I need some quiet, or I'd rather not talk about that, or simply, that doesn't feel good to me. These are gentle words, but they hold the power to define your emotional space. Because your heart also deserves a door, and that door should be able to close when someone comes in with haste, with judgment, or with indifference. You can also begin to surround yourself with new people. This isn't about finding replacements, but about opening space for new kinds of connection. Sometimes a conversation in the grocery line, a brief chat with a neighbor, can spark something that's been dormant. Respect and tenderness don't always come from those closest to us. Sometimes they arrive from the most unexpected places. And if today you feel like there's no one around who brings you peace, start by being with yourself. Not from isolation, but from recognition. Write a letter to yourself. Name what you feel, what you need, what you're no longer willing to accept. That letter doesn't need to be sent. It only needs to exist. It's an act of affirmation, a way of saying to yourself, I see me, I hear me, I take care of me. Because yes, there is a freer way to grow old, and it begins with this intimate gesture, putting your well-being at the center without guilt. What comes next is the time to face the challenges that can arise when you start choosing differently. because it's not always easy, but it is worth it, and you're more ready than you think. Maybe now you're feeling that mix of relief and fear that comes with all true change. Because when you start setting boundaries, when you begin choosing who belongs in your life and who doesn't, resistance often shows up, not just from others, but from within. And this is where we need to pause, not to stop, but to gently hold what still hurts or scares us. One of the most common obstacles is the fear of hurting others, especially for those who have spent a lifetime caring for everyone else. Women who've been mothers to all, even to adults who no longer offer a kind word. Men who've swallowed their frustrations in silence just to keep the peace. The thought of saying no can feel like an act of cruelty, but it's not. Saying no when something harms you is a way of protecting the life you still have. And though it may sting at first, it opens the door to more honest relationships. Guilt can also creep in, that inner voice that whispers, "What if I'm wrong? What if I'm overreacting?" That guilt isn't yours. It's inherited. It's the echo of a culture that never taught us our well-being is sacred too. Guilt begins to dissolve when you realize that by taking care of yourself, you're not only doing good for you, you're also setting an example for those around you. Because your children, your grandchildren, your friends, they all need to learn that respect begins with oneself. And of course, there's the fear of emptiness. What if I walk away from someone who hurts me and there's no one left? That fear is real, but it's also temporary. In the silence that follows your departure from what wounds you, healing starts to grow. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you have to learn how to hold that space of waiting. But sooner or later, when you shift how you show up in the world begins to respond in kind. New people appear. Long dormant conversations reawaken. Even those who once didn't respect you may, over time, learn a new way to relate to you. Not all will, but those who do will come from a more genuine place. Remember this, no act of self-care is selfish. Choosing your peace is a form of love, and like all forms of love, it takes practice. At first it's hard, then it becomes second nature. And one day you realize you no longer need permission to be who you are. That day, growing old stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming a space of freedom. What comes next is weaving all of this into your everyday life, not through theories, but through simple acts. The next part of this journey will show you how to turn these insights into real, respectful, human choices. Because living a wise old age isn't a miracle. It's a daily decision, and you've already begun. You've now walked through all the truths this journey had to offer. You've acknowledged pains that may have been silent for years. You've considered the possibility of living your later years from a different place, freer, more your own, more at peace. And now it's only natural to ask, how do I sustain this new way of being in the world? How do I face the emotions that will arise when I begin to practice what has touched my heart today? The first emotion that might appear is sadness. Not a destructive sadness, but one that reveals what's been lost. Time, energy, words left unspoken. That sadness is valid. It's a kind of mourning. Because when you begin choosing from a place of self-respect, you also come to recognize what you endured in the name of love. Don't push that sadness away. Sit with it like you would with an old friend. Say to it, "Yes, this hurt, but no more." Doubt may show up too. Did I do the right thing by stepping away? Am I overreacting? That doubt doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're stepping out of an old pattern. And every departure brings a sense of vertigo. But if you listen to your body, your breathing, your rest, your mood, you'll notice something has already begun to shift. Sometimes the body celebrates long before the mind catches up. There will be moments of misunderstanding. Maybe those around you won't understand your new way of setting boundaries. Maybe they'll be upset, pull away, or judge you. This is part of the process. It's not a punishment, it's proof of your commitment to yourself. Remember, you didn't come into this life to please everyone. You came to live with dignity. And sometimes that dignity is earned in solitude. But it's a fertile solitude, one that in time blossoms into new connections. And yes, there will be fatigue. Change is not easy. Staying true to a decision takes effort, but you're allowed to rest. You don't have to be strong every day. There will be days when you say yes out of habit, days when you don't have the strength to explain your no. That's okay. What matters is that you're no longer asleep. You're no longer on autopilot. You've begun to choose. This new commitment to yourself doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence, for you to listen to your emotions, to honor your boundaries, to acknowledge your past without letting it repeat what once hurt you. If you stumble, get back up. If you doubt, breathe. If you're afraid, remember everything you've already made it through, because you've lived a lot. You've loved, you've lost, you've held on. And that gives you the right to take care of yourself, to protect your joy, to build a later life that's not a repetition of sacrifice, but a celebration of everything you've walked through. Now we can take another step, not toward closure, but toward integrating everything you've felt. A gesture, a phrase, a ritual that gives form to your decision. Because this doesn't end here. What comes next is your life. With more clarity, with more freedom, with more love for yourself. Imagine this moment like opening a window after many years of keeping it shut, not to look out with longing, but to let in fresh air. What you've heard today isn't just a series of reflections. It's a real invitation to inhabit your later years from a different place. A place that's more conscious, more dignified, more yours. You don't need to change everything overnight. It's enough to begin with a gesture, a small decision, a different kind of conversation, a quiet morning where you listen to yourself before anyone else. Because this stage of life, even with its absences and its challenges, also brings a powerful truth. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You no longer need to please anyone. You are no longer here to live according to what others expect of you. You are here to feel good, to rest, to laugh, to reflect, to love in your own way. And if any relationship stands in the way of that, maybe its cycle has come to an end. Letting go is not betrayal, it's maturity. Maybe you remember the woman who chose not to answer certain calls anymore, or the man who decided to eat lunch alone rather than keep listening to blame. They didn't walk away out of hatred, they did it out of self-love. And it was from that deep respect for themselves that they began to live a lighter old age. You can do the same, in your time, in your way, with your words. Today, you don't need to shout. You don't need to convince anyone. Just realize that you can shift direction with a single step. Maybe that step is staying silent, where before you would have over-explained. Maybe it's writing a letter you'll never send, but that gives your voice back to you. Maybe it's looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I deserve to be well. I want to invite you to leave a comment with 2 words that represent your decision. 2 words that name your path. And if you're not sure which ones to choose, here's one I offer you. I choose peace. Write it down if anything you heard today resonated with you. Write it to remind yourself tomorrow when doubt or fatigue return. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a sister, a friend, a companion on this journey, share this video with them. You never know when a word will arrive just in time. You never know when one small gesture can change a life. Thank you for making it this far. Thank you for listening, for your courage, for your presence. This channel remains open for you. And right now, other videos are appearing on your screen that might continue to accompany you. Because this conversation doesn't end today. It's only just beginning, and what's coming might be even more yours.